Hi there, my name's Garry Turner, interpersonal catalyst, corporate activist, and believer in the power of connection to drive positive change. And that's what I'd love to introduce to you today. The idea of the global conscious chemicals community, a community that I would love to co-create with you, should you be interested. I've been on a heck of a journey myself over the last 5 years, where I've actually gone outside of the chemical and allied industries to fuel my personal development, my growth, my awareness raising, my developing of vulnerability, because I've not really had the community or the network within the chemicals and allied sector to do any of that work. And it's made me realize, what could it be like if there was a cross-functional, cross-sectorial global community of open-hearted, open-minded change makers that truly want to drive our critically important industry forward, the chemicals industry and all of its allied sectors. So that's from big oil, energy, renewables, through to chemical and plastic intermediates, through to food manufacturing, pharmaceuticals, advanced materials, through to consumers, and then the global supply chain that wraps all of that. It's an incredibly important part of the world within which we live today. However, we have to acknowledge that it's pretty extractive in pretty much every area. And also, I would invite us to think that the way that we lead ourselves and organizations can often be quite extractive as well. So my invitation to you and to us is to co-create and build a self-organized global conscious chemicals community where we connect globally and activate locally. We have the technology now that's been proven over the last 12 months as we've been situated in place due to the pandemic. And I'd love to really want to be part of a meaningful dialogue and also a meaningful community of change agents that really drive the leadership practices and the products and the way that we are together within this industry and how we impact the planet forward and aim towards a more regenerative state and away from a more extractive state. So why does this matter so much? I spent time with the Rhythm team over the last 8 weeks, really just using this idea of the global conscious chemicals community as my area to explore within the Regenerative Design Lab. And I just wanted to start here because this really, this is one of the insights that I took away from the experience. And this is basically the life cycle of all things, in line with nature. So we have birth, we have growth, we have death, and we have decay. But what's really fascinating for me is when I think about the chemicals and allied industries, it feels quite myopically focused on birth and growth. So yeah, we birth a new company, we birth a new product, we grow that product, we grow that company, and we are in deep, deep fear for any of those things to die. And we're definitely in deep, deep fear for those things to decay. But of course, what we're missing is the being in line with nature's systems. When a belief system or a product runs to its end of its life, we should be allowed to let that go and let it die, because whatever we let go to die then decays and becomes the compost, the fertilization, the nutrients for the next idea or the next company or the next product that we develop in line with nature's systems. And this was just fascinating me, that we are really scared, both in our own lives, but also certainly in corporate life, to be talking about death and decay. But I would assert, as part of this community idea, is that to embrace the whole cycle of life, birth, growth, death, and decay, is critical. We're not just talking about physical material products here, although that's part of the equation. We're also talking about ourselves. What are the beliefs that are out of date that we can let go of? What are the feelings and thoughts that we have that are out of date and we can let go of? What are the practices? What are the ways that we lead that can be degenerative and extractive and maybe myopic, that don't serve us or the people that we lead? So I just want to hold that space for a moment as I take you through my initial vision for this global conscious chemicals community. But it's, at the moment, it's really early seeding. I'm really looking to reach out to you to find out if you'd like to be part of this exploration and this journey. So what's the context? The context is, I believe there's a number of pain points that we experience within and across the chemicals and allied sector, which includes, we're not particularly aware, I don't think, of how everything joins up. So to have a mobile phone in our hands, the next upgrade, we are actually accessing precious rare earth metals from mines in Africa, for example. And there is a risk that we are displacing indigenous wisdom in those areas, which could be lost forever after thousands of years of living with nature and living from the land. So are we aware of these, this mouse I have in my hand, the mobile phone, this mic I'm speaking through? What are the materials that go into making each of those things? And are they coming through degenerative, extractive means, or are they coming through regenerative practices that do give life? Question. This is all quite new awareness for me, so there's no judgment in this. It's just really trying to raise the awareness of the impact of our critical sector on everyday items that surround us. Do we think about the connectivity? Do we come to within the industry and with our own roles and our own lives from a place of high self-worth? Do we believe we're good enough? Do we believe that we have the right to show up as whole human beings? I look around the chemicals and allied industry and I don't think we have this sort of conversation enough. Do we role model vulnerability? Do we ask for help? So I think there's some great opportunity as part of a co-created global community to help raise the level of self-worth, to raise the level of awareness. Again, how do we lead with heart as well as our head? How do we lead with logic and with intuition and creativity? And of course, we have degenerative products, and we certainly have a degenerative financial system based on short-termism, and ultimately a cancerous capitalist system right now. That's the only way to describe it, as David Suzuki once said. It's literally eating itself alive. And we are all part of that, but we can be part of a change towards something that's more life-giving as well. That's my assertion. So what's the overarching purpose of this global chemicals community? I've got it down to, and again, this is to be iterated with you, but this means something to me meaningfully, which is why I reach out to you today. The conscious chemicals community exists to raise awareness of the interconnectivity and interdependence on all things across the chemicals and allied industries, so that we can collectively work to reduce degenerative practices and products which currently degrade living systems and quality of life. Through leveraging the collective wisdom of global South and global North peers within and across functions, sectors, tribes, and associations, so that products, processes, and collaborations are increasingly developed in line with nature's systems regeneratively, reducing global inequities. Every time I read that, I feel something in my body. I truly believe that we all want to be part of something meaningful like this, but we just haven't had the vision. I certainly didn't have the vision. I didn't have the self-worth to even recommend such a crazy idea as this. But I hope you see value in this and you want to be part of the journey as we look to co-create and bring this to life. And finally, how do we want to be within this community? How do we want it to feel? How do we want to experience one another? I feel that the quality of life is going to be around feeling energized, showing up as whole people, sitting in a state of emergence, not needing all the answers, really role modeling that vulnerability and that curiosity and that courage. It'd be deeply networked, again, connecting globally, activating locally. We'll be able to multiply our impact exponentially through energy exchange, wisdom exchange, knowledge exchange. We'll be able to be bold and visionary in trying to turn around the challenges that we have. And we can be deeply present with one another in this virtual space and of course locally as we are able. And I think three of the major USPs for me are around building a co-created psychologically safe space to be able to have these meaningful discussions. We'll be able to effectively share knowledge across sector and across role. And ultimately, what's that one say? That's right. We're also looking at, that's right, global perspective. So how can we learn from our global South peers and our global South peers from global North? We are part of one singular human race and we all have to survive on what nature gives us. We need to stop destroying the very planet on which gives all of us all things life, animals, plants, us human beings. So that's the context and that's the frame on which I'm looking to develop this community. When we look at the health, we're looking at 4 key areas as per the design lab, which is around energy flow, information cycles, network connections, and communication cycles. And because of this is so self-organized and we need each of us to be taking part and contributing, what's interesting, to give life to this community, I believe a lot of death is required, back to that living cycle. So how do we allow that armor, the fear, to let go of that? How do we get rid of that armor that we layer up when we become professionals within the chemicals and allied sector? How can we show up in our humanity more across sector and across role? How do we get away from the excessive busyness of our lives, both at home and within the workplace? How do we let that go? How do we let go of attachment to outcomes? When I get that job role or when I've developed that product, I will feel good enough. That's that self-worth piece again. And that's within beliefs, the story of separation, and also within our corporate roles. So death required equals a lot of letting go for me. And I think the more we can let go of attachment to our particular job role within our particular sector, let that go as if that's our full identity, and allow ourselves to become more intersectional, more whole, and allow us to come up and show up more fully as we design products and develop one another in community more effectively. What I'm really excited about is I went through these 20 questions from the design lab. 18 out of 20 of them were a clear 5. Energy can flow, the information can flow, the network connections are rich, and the communication cycle can be frictionless because it will be self-organized. There is nobody that owns it. I don't own it. You don't own it. And we just have this incredible space where we can come together and just energetically connect and share and grow and build the future that we want to build for ourselves, but also our children, our grandchildren, and the next generations. It's an incredibly regenerative idea, this, and something that is deeply life-giving for those that want to take part in it. When we then take a look at the structures, there are 6 key design principles for regenerative life-giving structures, whether that's organizations, your own life, or this community, that I believe could truly be a game changer excuse me, for positive change in the world. So those principles are around holism, so actually really embracing the whole, interdependence, uniqueness, being evolutionary and emergent, nodal, and also developmental. This community touches every 6 of those elements deeply, hence having a 4.5 out of 5 regenerative potential. Every one of us brings each 6 of these elements with us as a human being. So I'm really excited about the potential here. Excuse me. There's 2 particular structures that I've imagined at the moment. And again, I'm looking for you to come in and iterate these, challenge these, pull these apart and co-create. But I do believe regeneration of the human spirit and regeneration of the allied chemicals and allied industry are 2 critically close factors of this overarching global conscious chemicals community. So within the regenerating the human spirit part, we're talking about learning development within the community, for the community, bringing in outside speakers, reading circles, peer-to-peer mentoring and coaching, and also association with other global movements like Humans First. A beautiful personal development space for each of us individually and also collectively. And then we have the regenerating the chemicals and allied industries part, which is we bring that consciousness shift, that increased awareness to the industry. So then how do we run experiments together with this increased awareness within and across sector and role? How do we then focus on becoming more regenerative and away from being extractive? How do we develop meaningful networks, both within our own sectors and across sectors? And this is important on both sides. How do we have a practice ground, a psychologically safe space to practice being more vulnerable, to practice running experiments, to practice sharing experience within and across sectors, something that we've been taught is anti-competitive. Actually, when we're talking about life, it's super competitive if we want to survive in the next 50 years as a human race. So some of the other areas I'm focusing on in terms of structures are, again, learning development, practice ground, meaningful networking, experimentation labs, how we come together for meetings, and networking and leveraging the networks that we have both within this conscious chemicals community and outside. Now, what's really interesting and exciting for me is there's 3 particularly key acupuncture points. One is bringing together the often forgotten global South voices into this conversation with global North. It's the effective knowledge sharing across North and South, but also across sector and role and function. These 3, I believe, are the critical acupuncture points that we can co-create together to drive forward the agenda of all of our respective companies, but also the world agendas, the sustainability goal agendas. We have got a collective wisdom that is just sitting, waiting to be untapped that I don't think we're unleashing right now. I wonder if you'd agree with that, or would you challenge? I'd love to hear from you. We then go into the work, which is actually how do we actually bring this all to life tangibly? I've left this space quite empty because I want you to work with me and all of us on co-creating what this needs to look like. So focus groups, the next step. I will be reaching out to a number of peers that I've sort of hinted at this idea with so far, just to check, is it of value? Could it be of interest? How much time could and would you want to commit to this? How would you want to be involved? And really just start to build out this network and just run some experiments as part of this global conscious chemicals community. What works, what doesn't, and continuously iterate, as all good agile organizations will do. And this PowerPoint's been really helpful for me to invite others, you, into this currently liminal space, this space in between the old world of fear and anxiety, of competition, of domination, of extraction, into this new regenerative, collective, love-based world where we are all part of one system. So there is a bridge. We're in that liminal space now, and I think this community is a critical, potentially, bridge from that old way of being and leading and producing to a new way. And we are part of that. We are that change, should you wish to be part of this. So there's 4 sort of key areas that I'm looking at around work, which is regenerating the human spirit, regenerating self-advocacy. So how do we show up more fully ourselves? How do we challenge the status quo? How do we support one another? Challenging our own organizations in a healthy, constructive way, where often we feel in fear to do that through risk of losing our jobs, for example. Regenerating structures. So again, how do we make sure we bring those global north and south voices together? And regenerating systems. How do we actually look at how the financial system truly funds this critical industry, the global chemical and allied industries? How do we look to try and bring together what systems do we actually use? So how are we going to do this? Are we going to use Mighty Networks? Are we going to use LinkedIn groups, Facebook groups? There's stuff to be worked through around how we develop and co-create life-giving systems to bring this vision to life. But we need to be in this together to do that. Finally, onto abundance. So imagine for a moment, everything that we're speaking about, everything I've spoken about so far is possible. And it is possible if we come together to co-create it. So the vision from my side, and I believe this is realistic, is an abundant 5 million person plus network all across the world. Again, across big energy, renewables, chemical manufacture, intermediates, food, pharma, the global supply chain, all coming together with open hearts and open minds, running experiments, sharing knowledge. And it's all with the aim of moving from our currently degenerative, extractive ways to more life-giving, co-created, collaborative, life-giving ways that are regenerative and that will sustain, more than sustain, our time on this planet whilst designing in line with nature's systems. So this is for products, this is for organizations, this is for our own lives, this is for how we lead. Truly abundant state of flowing energy across sector, across role, as we lift up every single person that works within the chemicals and allied system, and we free them to be the whole human being that they deserve to be. But to get there, we're going to have to deal with the barriers that exist. There is very real command and control issues within the chemicals and allied industry. There is a lack of accountability at times. There is a lot of fear. We are focusing on the short term. There's an awful lot of silos. It doesn't always feel safe to speak up and challenge the status quo. But through this abundance vision, through the personal development area around regenerating the human spirit, like we're all doing the best we can in the moment, as Brené Brown once said in one of her books. We are, every single one of us. There is no judgment in this community, but we want to create the safe space to get so much better and to design in line with nature's systems so that we can survive as a species longer term. And finally, then looking at the strategies, how to bring that to life. And again, we're looking at personal development. We're looking at knowledge sharing across sectors and roles, all with this overarching aim of a more regenerative future for us, our children, our grandchildren, for the animals, for everything that has life on this planet. We are designed to grow. We are not designed to be stale. So it will involve a lot of letting go. Back to where I started, we have to change the way we be together across the chemicals and allied industry. It is a control security-based industry. It's very scientific. It's very evidence-based, and that's all okay. but how do we open up the aperture to more intuition and courage and love and vulnerability and collaboration and connection, as well as being scientific based? Because it is very important. So it's opening up the heart and the mind and stepping into vulnerability, something that I had a podcast for 2.5 years around value through vulnerability. And as Samantha Zapaya, my spiritual guide based down in Metro Manila, the Philippines, shared with me quite recently, psychologically safe spaces are not always comfortable spaces. So we need to get used to being uncomfortable, to have the difficult conversations about the extractive practices or the way that we lead or how we show up personally. There is no judgment in this community. It is going to be a co-created safe space. But we do need to show up fully without that armor, without that fear, high in self-worth, and we all deserve to live that full version of ourselves lives. Trust me, as somebody that was in my head for over 20 years after being bullied as a kid, it's time for us to let go of those stories and to step into our wholeness. And the more we do that, the more we regenerate the industry, we regenerate our human spirit, and we get out of the way. Mother Nature doesn't need us to do any of this. Well, she does, but she just regenerates herself. Like, the whole idea of this community is to help us get out of her way. That is the summary message. So what I see is an infinity loop here. So as we regenerate the human spirit, we regenerate the chemicals and allied industry, and they just keep feeding each other in this beautifully infinity loop, which of course is energy. We are all energy. We are all connected. Whatever your religious beliefs are, whatever your mental beliefs are, we are all energy. We are all from the same stuff, stardust, and we will all go back to it. So how can we step into that, drop the fear, drop the armor, show up fully, learn, co-create, debate, and truly turn this incredibly important chemicals and allied industry around from the extractive, often fear-based paradigm and short-termism to abundant, co-creative, connected, collaborative, in line with nature's systems. That's the proposition, that's the vision, that's the idea. I would love to hear from you if you would be interested to have a further conversation on this and how you might want to take part. I'll leave you with this, which came from the N-Rhythm team during the design lab. An organization is a living system capable of maintaining itself within a boundary of its own making, where abundance and resilience are recurring outcomes of its underlying health. That is what an organization looks like when it's self-managed, self-organized, when it's designed in line with nature's systems. It's not extractive, it's life-giving. This community is a living system capable of maintaining itself within a boundary of its own making, where abundance and resilience are recurring outcomes of its underlying health. Us together in community, we can do this. We can totally accelerate the regenerative, life-giving aspects of the chemical and allied industry. There's great work going on with sustainability. There's now great pushing towards more circular production. How do we share that knowledge and accelerate it without having the clenched fist of IP and fear and competitive advantage? How can we open up our hands and truly start to collaborate so we can accelerate towards the common good, which is our survival as a species on the planet that needs us to get out of our own way? You can find my contact details there. I'm also on Clubhouse now, which is an incredible social platform, my LinkedIn, my website, and also my email address. I do work in corporate. I value greatly the organization in which I serve, but this is a vision, a personal mission on my behalf that I am confident that my work organization will also play a role in. And I hope that you will want to be involved as part of this global conscious chemicals community. Connecting globally, activating locally. My name's Garry Turner. I so hope to hear from you soon.